Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday live stream here inside the Gut Solution. I am Mara Salerno, the Gutsy Health Coach, and welcome to all of you. For those of you who are new and you don't know me, I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, an FDNP practitioner, and I help people overcome their chronic digestive conditions and avoid pain and dread of the toilet and get back to living their lives the way that they want and have quality of life. That's the biggest thing that I always hear from everyone. And I wish that for every person. We all deserve that, right? So today I'm going to be talking about how food impacts chronic digestive conditions and what we can do to take care of this and make it so that food isn't a problem, right? But it becomes our medicine. Before we dive in, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping things, which is I always like to remind you all that when you come to the Gut Solution page up at the top, just below the banner, there is a guides icon. And if you click on that, all of the videos, all of the resources for the group are in there. They're really organized. And I really encourage you to go in there and take advantage of the resources that are here in the group for you, because empowerment is education. It's a first step. And then you are able to make the right choices for yourself so you can get better and overcome your chronic digestive conditions. Okay. So I hope that's helpful for you all. And if you have specific topics regarding chronic digestive conditions that you want me to cover in these live streams, then please type them below in the comments, put them as a post in the group, DM me, let me know if there's something specific that you'd like to hear covered or any questions that you have. We can even do Q&A sessions as well, okay? All right, so let's see. We're gonna dive in and I'm gonna start by saying, food, I think for many of you who are struggling with chronic digestive conditions, becomes a bit of a troublemaker. And it can be a tough thing because for many of us, we love food, right? I mean, food is a part of our life. We know that we have a DNA connection with food. And so when we're not able to consume it in the way that we are used to and that we used to enjoy, and that gave us like an emotional connection and a good feeling with, it can be really challenging. So I want you to try to take some deep breaths, open up to possibility, and know that it's possible for you to truly overcome this situation if you are in a really hard spot with food. Because for some of you, you may be only eating maybe a handful or 2 handfuls of food. For others of you, you may be eating a lot more than that. And so I want to help you resolve that wherever you're at, okay? So in regards to food and how it affects chronic digestive conditions, the first thing that I wanted to touch upon is how it impacts the gut and why it can cause trouble. So if you didn't watch last week's live stream, in that live stream, I break down the anatomy of the small intestine and how something called leaky gut occurs in the small intestine. So if you haven't watched that video, please look and scroll down in the feed in the group and you will see it there titled. Please do watch it because it would take me too long in this live stream to go through all of that again and then talk about what I'm going to talk about. So if something doesn't make sense, please go back and watch that. But one of the reasons that food causes trouble in the gut is because of something that's called leaky gut. And when your gut is leaky, then food starts to drop through, it hits the immune system from the bloodstream and starts to trigger off an immune response that tags the food. And then what happens is the immune system begins to think that this food is an invader when it's not, right? It's a whole food. And so this becomes problematic because then when you're eating, which most of us eat between 2 to 5 times per day, you know, it's naturally, even in its best form, an inflammatory action. But if you've got leaky gut and you've got food dropping through and getting tagged by your immune system, then when you're eating, it can be even more of an inflammatory fire, basically, that occurs. And depending on how chronic your chronic digestive condition is, then, I talk to a lot of you, and some of you are like, immediately after you eat, you've just got a stomach ache, your belly's starting to rumble, you're experiencing diarrhea, you're experiencing bloating immediately. All of those are tall tale signs of not only food sensitivity, but of a leaky gut. And this is where food can be really problematic. And typically speaking, most chronic digestive conditions are stemmed from leaky gut. Okay. And how leaky gut occurs, again, please go look in that video. Otherwise, I'll be here for too long and you won't enjoy that. So that's the first piece of how food impacts the gut, right? Now, secondly, is that food has now become a bit weaponized in the sense that, we have pesticides that are thrown on our food. They're genetically modified, and we're consuming them. And oftentimes the soil is toxic, both because of water quality and other elements. And then the food is being raised in this kind of environment, which is very toxic. And so if you're eating conventional foods, first of all, even if they're fruits and vegetables and they're whole foods, you are receiving such a high toxic load. It is unbelievable. Maybe one of these days on a live stream, I can get into some of the research, past and present, about genetically modified organisms and pesticides and what we've been able to find out about it. So food has become weaponized. And because of that, even if you're eating, organic food, which from a lot of you I hear, I'm eating good, I'm eating so clean, and I don't even eat any processed foods, it's all whole foods, and I can't believe my stomach is like this, I can't believe I'm having all these issues. And I can completely sympathize, and it is so wrong. It should not be happening. It's true. However, now you have to be a health detective, and you have to be proactive, and you have to get excited about taking your health into your own hands and getting the right kind of support. So I am offering you this information, which is that your food needs to be of the highest quality. That means it needs to be as pure as possible. So getting food from an organic grocer, getting food from a farmer, growing your own food, because our food has become so toxic. And what happens is that the gut then has to process not only the food with a leaky gut, right? It then also has to process all the toxins, and these genetically modified organisms create an issue as well on the gut and the gut lining. And then the liver is having to take on the burden. So this is how food can really begin to impact the gut in a way that we don't want, right? So just removing foods that you're sensitive to is an important step, but it's not the only step, right? The other thing that I think is important to think about with food is that we no longer live in our ancestral regions. And many of us are very mixed. We have a mother and a father from completely different places in the world. We live in a location that neither of our parents were in. We eat foods that our families were not necessarily brought up on. And I'm meaning like going back at least like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations, and even further. And so what that does is that we have a genetic makeup and we have a relationship with food based on region. And when that kind of contract gets broken, and then we intermingle with others from different places, which is a beautiful thing, but we're in a different seasonal climate. We are also being bombarded by modern lifestyle, which is full of stressors, and, both mental, emotional stressors, working too much. We're in front of screens and these lights and things like this, and, the whole gamut. All of those things influence our gut and our body's ability to digest well, and also what foods will help to promote the best balance and the best rebuilding of our gut, right? So that is one thing to consider. And for a lot of us, there's nothing we can really do about that. But I do want to give you a little bit of background and foresight and thought about everything that's going on so that you become more of a detective with your health instead of just listening to what the doctors have to tell you. Because I know a lot of you always tell me how much they haven't been so helpful for you. So yeah, that's a little bit of food for thought for empowerment for yourselves, because we're eating like all these superfoods from Peru and here and there. Well, if you're from there, that's wonderful. But if you're not, it doesn't always do all of the awesome things that we would hope it would do for every single person, because we're all unique. Okay. Another reason why food impacts the gut is it can also promote, not only, hamper leaky gut, but it can also promote an environment that is right for pathogens. So for many of you, I always say this, but I think it's important. 99.999% of my clients are walking around with pathogens. That's because everybody is. It's part of our world and our environment, though they are getting a little more interesting. And pathogens are things like worms, parasites, viruses, funguses, molds, and the like, okay? And bad bacteria. And they are not supposed to get into the gut lining, but when it's leaky, they can, and we're more susceptible to it. And certain types of diets that are really high in carbohydrates, even if those carbohydrates are whole foods that are really clean, that can also promote an environment that is right for this, because pathogens love to thrive on these types of carbohydrates. I will say though, if you have been on this journey for some time and you have been, trying to eradicate any pathogens that have been problematic for you, you might see too how intelligent they are, because sometimes they can begin to feed off of other elements of your diet, meaning proteins and fats as well. So it's about finding that right balance for you and really getting the proper guidance. And that's really important. Okay. So if you haven't learned but one thing from what I just talked about about how food impacts the gut, that is the baseline is to get on a completely organic diet. Everything. I mean, everything organic. And some people will be like, oh, are you crazy? I mean, how do you go out to eat? I don't. And the reason that I don't is because I do not want to pay anybody to kill me, to hurt my body, to put toxins in me. I can have fun a ton of other ways. I can be with my family and socialize, and I am totally fine with it because I want to live a healthy life. I want my kids to have a healthy life, and I want you to have a healthy life. So I want you to stand up for your health. And really, the first foundation is just eating organic food. Though for many of you, that's not going to resolve the issue, but it's at least a foundational layer that you can do on your own. You don't need anyone's help to do that. You can make choices that way. Okay, so that was how food impacts the gut and why it can cause trouble. Number two is why food fads and diets don't work. Okay. Well, part of the reason that food fads and diets don't work is because they are not taking into account your unique biochemistry. So what I mean by your biochemistry is that it's the science behind your body. It's your genetics. It's how you utilize your energy throughout the day. It's the environment you live in. It's your genetic tendencies. All of these different factors are part of your biochemistry and how it functions, and what ideal foods will be best for your scenario to give you the best balance. And that includes helping your gut to heal and your body to heal. So this is why, for example, I actually do not work with vegetarians and vegans, because I cannot help them rebuild their gut lining, because of the fact that plant-based foods tend to have a lot of anti-nutrients and toxins in them. And they are typically the reason that people come and see me is because they're like, God, I can't even eat vegetables. I can't even eat fruits. And in fact, for any of you watching, whether it's live or on the replay, tell me in the comments, like, Do you notice when you eat any plant foods that you start experiencing symptoms? And it's not because all plant foods are just like the epitome of all evil, but they do have a lot of anti-nutrients. So let me explain this to you really quick. When you plant a seed in a garden, right? One of the things it needs is water and sunshine, but the water actually is basically soaking the seed, right? And it's getting it ready to sprout. Well, that outer shell that's around the seed, it is full of anti-nutrients, okay? And these anti-nutrients are to ward off pests and disease so that it can survive and thrive and actually sprout into a plant, and nature keeps going on, right? Well, then what happens is that the plant then grows, right? And then it then turns into a flower and seeds again. Well, in all of those processes, both in the outer shell of the seed, in the plant itself, so like let's say cauliflower grows or broccoli grows or whatever, right? Kale grows. And then once it flowers and it seeds again, all of these processes have these anti-nutrients in them, and they make it very difficult for our guts to digest because they're made to ward off pests and disease. But for some reason, we did not get the memo. And this is where I think ancestral wisdom has been forgotten, and we are catching up by getting sick and having research come out to help us understand these things. So I'm sharing this with you, and I encourage you to share this with others and see what you uncover, but this is part of the reason. So with vegans and vegetarians, they're eating a lot of grains. They're eating a lot of beans, even if you soak them or you sprout them, eating a lot of vegetables and fruits. And it's causing a havoc on their gut, on their cholesterol levels, on everything. So, this may seem and sound like kind of like, whoa, I always thought that would be like the healthiest diet around. And actually it can in fact be quite damaging. Now, other diets as well, though, you'll see some people have real success with like keto, or some people have success with a traditional foods diet, or other people have a lot of success with this diet or that diet, right? Whatever it may be. And the real problem lies in it's not addressing your unique biochemistry. And like I was talking about before in the first section about how food impacts the gut, about your genetics and, season, lifestyle, parents, all these things that come into factor to make you, you, and what foods you need for your gut and your body to thrive. Now, one of the things that food fads and diets don't take into consideration is food sensitivities, right? And histamine issues, salicylate issues, oxalate issues. A lot of these are basically, well, salicylates and oxalates are anti-nutrients, and histamines are basically the cells responding to the body on fire, basically, like an allergic reaction kind of thing. And there's others as well, FODMAP foods, etc. And so there's lots of layers to figuring out what foods work appropriately for you. And so a lot of these fads and these diets don't take these things into consideration. So that's why, like, for example, I was talking with a gentleman last night, and he was telling me about how he started the AIP diet, which is the autoimmune protocol diet, about 2 months ago, and he's lost 20 pounds, and his reflux has gone down from like a 10 to a 1, but he's only eating once a day, and he's still having massive bloating right after he eats. And so what that's telling me is that AIP is going really well, but he's still got food sensitivities and probably some pathogens. And so, you can do a lot of good, but you also may not get there completely on your own, unfortunately. Because there's so much to it. It's not as simple as it used to be to just be healthy anymore. Because of the onslaught of toxins, genetically modified organisms, visible toxins, invisible toxins, etc., and lifestyle factors. Okay, let's see. Number 3, how to determine your unique diet to optimize the health of your gut and your healing journey. So the first thing I would say is that absolutely running a food sensitivities test for those of you who are still eating an array of foods. For those of you who are only eating maybe a handful or 2 handfuls of food, a food sensitivities test isn't going to be great for you because it's just going to tell you more of what you already know, which is that you're sensitive to a bazillion foods. And that is not empowering. And I want people to be empowered, and there's a way we can go about it. Okay. And also because you're only eating a few foods already. Secondly, absolutely running a DNA pathogen stool test to identify any pathogens. And for those of you who don't know, your conventional doctor, unfortunately, does not run these tests because it's just not what they use. And they're not typically covered by insurance. So I will say if you have an HSA card, it can be covered by that. And then once you run those 2 tests, and I'm a health coach, I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. This is what I run constantly for people amongst other tests, but these are at least the 2 base tests that you will need. For those of you who are experiencing some very atypical SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth symptoms, I would also highly recommend a very good high quality SIBO test that will cover all 3 gases, not just 1 or 2, okay? And then once I was to get those results, then what I would do is correlate it with everything that you've been sharing with me. And then I would put together a protocol, a food protocol that is appropriate for you as you're rebuilding your gut to accelerate your healing process. Because every time that you put in a food that is wrong for your body, you're creating another inflammatory storm. And it's not to freak you out or any of that, but it is just what is happening in the science of the body. So we have to be honest with ourselves about what's happening, and so that we can take action to make the right decisions. And that is really the way to determine what your optimal diet should look like, because you have to consider all the factors that are at least directly linking to the gut itself, right? So why don't you drop in the comments for me again, even for those of you on the replay, and comment, let me know if you have any insights, anything that's come up for you from what I've shared. So these are the 3 points, right? How food impacts the gut and why it can cause trouble, why food fads and diets don't work, and then how you can find your optimal food diet and increase and improve your gut health as well as your healing journey. So for those of you who have watched at least 2 of my live streams, you've been consuming the content here, and you are ready to invest in your health, you're ready to overcome your chronic digestive conditions, you are wanting support, and you are ready because you know you cannot do it on your own. You need help. So if that is you, I am going to drop my scheduling link here in the comments for you all, and you are welcome to schedule a call for yourself. Hey, Paul. And I will be happy to get back to you and see what it is that we can do to create a unique plan for you so you can overcome your chronic digestive condition. And I believe that is it for me today. Let me just double check again, see if I have any questions coming in. Paul, do you have any questions for me while you're on here live? All right. So I will see you all again next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I popped on here again a few hours later because the quality, great Paul, because the quality of the video and the audio was so poor. So I wanted to pop on here and make sure that you guys have clean, crisp not only reception, but visuals as well. So I will see you all again next week. And if you have any questions or anything for me, please post them in the group or DM me, and I will be more than happy to get back to you. All right. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.